Welcome to Live Review, where I review a game over the time I've played it. I'll review the first hour and then continue on until I feel I've gathered enough information about the game to drop a final review. This time we're talking about the first 3 hours of South Park: The Fractured But Whole. In the opening moments of the game, you're left off at South Park right after the Stick of Truth. You're still the king, and you go through a series of battles and then find out that the rest of the kids have stopped playing and are now doing this superhero thing. This knocks the new kid down from king to the lowest totem pole again, and he has to climb his way back up through the ranks by walking around town and getting selfies and doing missions to increase the popularity of Coon and Friends for Cartman. So as soon as you start the game, you can expect crazy ass South Park humor, and just in the few hours I played, as soon as I saw a cutscene that had anything to do with the characters, I was laughing and enjoying myself. It's wild. Especially if you still like South Park. Now, if you don't like South Park, well, the humor may not be for you. But then the question would be, why would you play a South Park game if you already know what you don't like about it? Now, in the first couple of hours, the main story isn't developing. It's more about meeting the characters in South Park and doing funny things with them and for them. This open portion of the game is about showing us what we can do, how we can wander the town, the fighting system, and the intricacies of the crafting system. Now, the first thing you learn about is the combat system, which is more of a grid system compared to the previous game that had a turn-based system. So now you have to position your players properly to get hits or avoid hits. Now, initially, I didn't really care for the system, and I still kind of think of it as limiting, but that may change as I get more in depth with the game. But as it is now, I played a melee character first, so I was stuck kind of unable to attack dudes adjacent to me, and I had to position myself out of the way of ranged dudes so that I can actually fight. So it was kind of a weird experience, especially when you have two ranged people like Super Craig and your own character walking around, and then you have to try to keep the ranged dudes just out of the position so they can attack and not get attacked by the bad guys. So it's a learning curve that you have to get into, but then when you learn what it's all about, it's not so bad, but it's still not great. I mean, it's fun, but I feel like they should have just went in a full Final Fantasy Tactics style grid system if they were going to do that. You don't level up normally like you do in every other game. There's no such thing as grabbing skill points and putting them on your character. Instead, you get artifacts which give you skills and damage bonuses like status effect damage and ultimate power regeneration increases, stuff like that. So instead, you craft these upgrades and then you apply them to your artifacts, and it makes you a better character. And that's how you get around in the game. So you have to get into fights, of course, finish missions, stuff like that. Now, pretty much everything that your character does increases the level, unlike other games where you just run around picking up stuff. So you can go out and pick up a yaoi collection, solve puzzles, and even take multiple deuces in different people's houses to increase the level. In fact, it felt like my initial hours of the game was all about walking around, walking into people's houses, stealing as much stuff as I could, and trying to find as many yaoi posters and silly puzzles that I could find while I was also collecting my selfies. Now, I said I played 3 hours of the game, but I really played probably 5. What I did was, instead of playing my melee character because I didn't like the way he played because his moves were too similar to Craig's, I switched out and played as both the Speedster character and the Blaster character. The Speedster class is the all-around class. They have the melee and they also have ranged attacks, as well as a special that they get to take 2 turns, but they lose 1 turn after they finish. Now, unlike the other 2 classes, the Speedster doesn't have any DOTs, aka damage over time moves. That's the negative of being the Speedster immediately. Now, the melee class, of course, is very effective at melee. It gets up close, but they are limited in how they can fight. So anybody that's too far, anyone that's blocking the path, they cannot actually hit. They must always be in the front of battle, taking all the brunt of the damage, etc., etc. The Blaster class seems like the most versatile of them all, with long range attacks and a knockback to push people away from them, as well as DOT damage. Now, I don't know if they're glass cannons yet. It seems like they take the exact same amount of damage as the other 2 classes, but we'll see how that pans out as we get further into the game. What I did notice is that when I went out of that section of the training into the real world, there were characters that were already immune to the fire damage that the character does. Also, the range class is more dependent on their DOT damage than their main focus damage, because the melee class and the Speedster class hits way harder than the range class, aka the Blaster class. So I already had a few problems on the early goings when a couple dudes were already immune to the fire damage, so I was hitting like a baby compared to the rest of the characters in the game. In the first 3 hours, I'm already happy about the game. It's funny as hell. I'm not sold on the combat system, but we got to get a little bit further into the game before I make a real determination on it. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.